Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Welcome. Glad to have you with us for this beautiful Sabbath evening service. Thanks to Alma and Wendy Dankoff for the music, and Jolene on piano, and Lela Dawkins recording our services. So we're going to begin with a traditional favorite, Havenu Shalom Aleichem. Let us bring peace. In other words, bring peace unto you, to me, unto the world. And if you have a prayer book, we're on the top of page 644. 644. The words are very easy. Havenu Shalom Aleichem, Aleichem Havenu Shalom. On top of 645, we're going to sing the beautiful melody L'chilach from Debbie Friedman. Let us go into a land that I shall show you, that God will show us. Page 645 in the prayer book. Blessing over the nerot, over the candles for Shabbat. We're on page 121 in our prayer books for a reading, and then we'll sing together the blessing when you're watching us on Friday night. Then you may kindle the lights at your own home with your own loved ones. Middle of page 121. O source of light and truth, creator of the eternal law of goodness, help us to find knowledge by which to live. Lead us to take the words we shall speak into our hearts and our lives. Bless all who enter this sanctuary in need, all who bring the offerings of their hearts. May our worship lead us to acts of kindness, peace, and love. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. continuing with reading on page 127. There are days when we seek things for ourselves and measure failure by what we do not gain. On Shabbat, we seek not to acquire, but to share. There are days when we exploit nature as if it were a horn of plenty that can never be exhausted. On Shabbat, we stand in wonder before the mystery of creation. There are days when we act as if we cared nothing for the rights of others. On Shabbat, we remember that justice is our duty, and a better world our goal. So we embrace Shabbat, day of rest, day of wonder, day of peace. Let's turn to the Psalms as we welcome the Sabbath and begin with the first of the 6 Psalms that are part of the liturgy for Friday night services. We begin with Psalm 95, and the words are L'chuna ranana ladonai, naria naria litzur yishenu. Top of page 130, 130. Continuing together, we're reading the English of Psalm 95 in the middle of page 130. Come, let us sing joyously to Adonai. Raise a shout for our rock and deliverer. Let us come into God's presence with praise. Let us raise a shout for God in song. For Adonai is a great God, the great ruler of all divine beings. In God's hands are the depths of the earth. The peaks of the mountains are God's. God's is the sea, God made it, and the land which God's hands fashioned. Come, let us bow down and kneel, bend the knee before Adonai our Maker. For Adonai is our God, and we are the people God tends, the flock in God's care. Oh, if you would but heed God's charge this day. Let's read from Psalm 98, and the words in English are towards the bottom of page 133. Page 133. A psalm. Sing to Adonai a new song, for God has worked wonders. God's right hand, God's holy arm, has won God's victory. Adonai has manifested God's victory, has displayed God's triumph in the sight of the nations. God was mindful of God's steadfast love and faithfulness towards the house of Israel. All the ends of the earth beheld the victory of our God. Raise a shout to Adonai, all the earth. Bring into joyous songs of praise. So let's read a portion from Psalm 29. We're in the middle of page 136. So the question is, what do all these Psalms have in common? They obviously don't have the liturgy is not exactly the same, the theme is not always the same, but you hear the words of victory, of gratitude, of greatness and righteousness, all of those symbols of clapping and dancing, enjoying the bounties of God's glory. So what does that all mean? The reason these Psalms are part of the Friday night liturgy is that they all have an echo or an intimation of the Messianic time. Because the Sabbath is considered about 1/60th of the Messianic era. It's a time of peace, a time of calmness, a time to forget about all of our worldly material demands and wants. And the Psalms are about God's greatness, about all the goodies that the Almighty has given us, whether it be this week or last week or 10 years from now. It reminds us that goodness comes from the Lord. So that's part of the essence of all 6 of these Psalms. Let's read together in the middle of 136. A Psalm of David. Ascribe to Adonai, O divine beings. Ascribe to Adonai glory and strength. Ascribe to Adonai the glory of God's name. Bow down to Adonai, majestic in holiness. The voice of Adonai is over the waters. The God of glory thunders. Adonai over the mighty waters. The voice of Adonai is power. The voice of Adonai is majesty. The voice of Adonai breaks cedars. Adonai shatters the cedars of Lebanon. God makes Lebanon skip like a calf, Syrian like a young wild ox. Syrian, by the way, is ancient Syria in the north of Israel. We're continuing with a beautiful melody of Lecha Dodi. Turn the page, we're on 138, and we'll sing together as a congregation. We always sing verses 1, 2, and then if you're able, stand up and we welcome the Sabbath and sing verse 9 together. So we're going to continue singing. The words are Shalom Aleichem Malachei Hasharet on 142. If you're home and standing up, you're welcome to sit down and relax. Shalom Aleichem. one of the traditional Sabbath table songs, probably also influenced and written by the Kabbalists who lived in the late 1500s in northern Israel. So we continue lifting up our voices. We're on page 144. We'll sing together the Hatzi Kaddish, which marks the end of the introductory prayers and psalms, and we're heading towards the Shema Yisrael. We're on 144 together. Yitkada v'yitkada Shemei Rabba, Yamad Yivrak Yirtei Yamlich Malchutei, V'chayechom Ru Yomechom, U'chayechom Chol Beit Yisrael, Ba'gala, Ba'gala, U'bizman Karib, V'ru Amen. Yeshmei Rabba Mevorach, Alam Yomei Hamaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach, Yitbar v'yitromam v'yitmaseh, V'yitagah v'yithaleh, V'yithalach, Shemei Kedusha brichu, Lela mikol birchata v'shirata, Tushlichata b'nehemata, Tamiram v'yama, Amen. Together, the call to worship. We're on 146, and we lift up our voices together. Baruch hu et Adonai Havorach, Baruch Adonai Havorach, Le'olam Vaed. Let's read the first blessing together, middle of page 148. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe, who speaks the evening into being, skillfully opens the gates, thoughtfully alters the time, changes the seasons, and arranges the stars in their heavenly courses according to plan. You are creator of day and night, rolling light away from darkness and darkness from light, transforming day into night, and distinguishing one from the other. Adonai Tzevaot is your name. Ever-living God, may you reign continually over us into eternity. Blessed are you, Adonai, who brings on the evening. Baruch atah Adonai, Amariv Aravim. The second blessing, Ahavat Olam, middle of page 150. Everlasting love you offer to your people Israel by teaching us Torah and mitzvot, laws and precepts. Therefore, Adonai, our God, when we lie down and when we rise up, we will meditate on your laws and your commandments. We will rejoice in your truth forever. Day and night we will reflect on them, for they are our life, and doing them lengthens our days. Never remove your love from us. Praise to Adonai, who loves your people Israel. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Together we sing, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto Leolam Vaed. Let's all be seated, please. So we're continuing with the first of the paragraphs known as the Shema and its blessings. The first paragraph, as you know, is called V'ahavta because it comes from Deuteronomy 6, and the first verb is you shall love. Let's read together on 154. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meodecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anochi metzavcha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'divarta bam v'shivtecha b'veitecha v'lechtecha v'derech v'shachpecha v'kumecha v'kshartam leot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot be'en enecha v'uktabtam al mezuzot echa v'visharecha leman tizkaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim lelohechem ani Adonai Elohechem asher hotzeti etchem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem lelohim ani Adonai Elohechem. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home, when you're away, when you lie down, and when you get up. Bind them as a sign on your hand, and let them serve as a symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thus you shall remember to observe all my commandments and be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohechem Emet. So let's turn to the words of Michamocha. Michamocha you'll find in your prayer book on 158, words from Exodus chapter 15. So we are continuing with a beautiful flute duet Alma and Wendy playing. These are, this is an arrangement of Hashkivenu, the next blessing, which you'll find on page 160 in the prayer book. Let's read the words of Hashkivenu together in the middle of 160. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace, and raise us up our guardian to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel, for your name's sake be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. Guard our going and coming to life and peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel. The shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, haporei sukat shalom aleinu, v'al kol amo Yisrael, v'al Yerushalayim. So we're going to sing the Yismechu. Middle of page 162. Yismechu b'malchutecha. Those who keep the Sabbath by calling it a delight will rejoice in God's realm. We turn now to the 7 basic blessings, the essential blessings of this portion of the service called the Tefillah. Tefillah means prayer with a capital P. So we're on 164 in our prayer books. We begin with a verse from Psalm 51, and then we'll begin the first 2 blessings of praise and gratitude to the Lord. And if you're able, please stand with us and we'll sing together. Adonai sefatati tachu via itilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, let my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu, Imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzhak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Elohei Gadol HaGibor Banara, Elohim, Gomel Chazadim Tovim, Vekonei HaKol, Vezocher Chasdecho B'imahot, Umevigula Livnei B'neihem, Leman Shemo Yahava, Melech Ozer Moshio Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen, Abraham Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol Atarab Moshiach, Mechakel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayeh HaKol Berachamim Rabim, Tzomech Nuflim Berofech Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayeh Emunato Lishenei Hafah, Michamocha Ve'al Gevuro, Umidom Elach, Melech Mimit, Umechayeh, Umatzmiat Yeshua, Ne'eman atah Hakayod HaKol, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol. Reading together, top of page 171. Days pass and years vanish, and we walk sightless among miracles. God, fill our eyes with seeing, and minds with knowing. Let there be moments when your presence, like lightning, illumines the darkness in which we walk. Help us to see wherever we gaze, that the bush burns unconsumed, and we, clay touched by God, will reach out for holiness and exclaim in wonder, how filled with awe is this place, and we did not know it. Blessed is the Eternal One, the Holy God. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. Let's all be seated, please. Reading together on bottom of 173. Top of page 173. May these hours of rest and renewal open our hearts to joy and our minds to truth. May all who struggle find rest on this day. May all who suffer find solace. May all who hurt find healing on this day. May all who despair find purpose. May all who hunger find fulfillment on this day. And may this day fulfill its promise. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Together on 175. Ever-present One, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer. Wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands, you are our God, whom alone we serve and reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, shotcha levadcha b'yirah na'avod. So come to the blessing of Thanksgiving, Modim, which you'll find on page 177. We're reading the top paragraph. God of goodness, we give thanks for the gift of life, wonder beyond words, for the awareness of soul, our light within, for the world around us so filled with beauty, for the richness of the earth which day by day sustains us. For all these and more, we offer thanks. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, u'lecha na'eh lehodot. The final blessing, the blessing of peace, Shalom Rav, you'll find on page 178. Take a pause for our own personal prayers. So we are in the midst of Deuteronomy, Devarim, world of words. Moses is giving a series of great sermons to the Jewish people. This portion in Hebrew, parashah, is called Ekev, from the Hebrew Ayin Kuf Vet. Ekev, you know the word Yaakov, right? Jacob. Well, Jacob literally means the heel, H-E-E-L, because when he came out of his mother's womb, he was holding on to the heel of his brother Esau, and that's how he got the name Jacob. And Ekev is from the same root, heel, but in English we'd have to translate the word on account of, or it shall come to pass, because it's kind of a conjunction. It's a transitional word in the sentence. It's the second word of the sentence in chapter 7, verse 12. So this Torah portion is very complex and very magnificent. It has all kinds of famous phrases in it, such as, man does not live by bread alone. You've all heard that phrase. That's really King James. God didn't speak that. King James did. The Hebrew is slightly different, and what's interesting is that none of us know the second part of that sentence, which is, man does not live by bread alone, comma, but by everything that proceeds out of the mouth of the Lord does a person live. In other words, we don't make things really happen. Ultimately, God helps us make things happen. So it's an important idea, which I'll come back to in a moment. Also, in this marvelous Torah portion in chapter 10, we have beautiful words that sound like the V'ahavta, that what does the Lord require of you? It sounds also like the prophet Micah, to love God with all your heart and soul, to do goodness, to be humble, to love mercy and kindness. That's one of the great themes of the prophetic mission of all of the latter prophets. And then, if we get to chapter 11, which we won't today, we have actually the second chunk or the second paragraph that's in the traditional blessings, or what's called the paragraphs after the V'ahavta. After we say Shema Yisrael, we begin V'ahavta. And after we do the V'ahavta paragraph, in a traditional prayer book, we would start with the words about V'haya im Shemoah. It shall come to pass that if you listen, if you hearken diligently unto the commandments of the Lord, all kinds of good things will happen to us. If we don't listen, if we don't follow the commandments, this chunk of the Torah says there are punishments that God may inflict upon us. There's a whole idea of reward and punishment embedded in these 8 sentences. They're very powerful sentences. Why they were taken out of the Reformed Prayer Book 75 years ago is a whole nother story. You'll have to come back one day and I'll explain that to you. But suffice it to say that this is, by the way, those same sentences, if you shall listen or if you shall not, those same sentences are inside a mezuzah scroll. And if anybody knows exactly what the Hebrew is in the mezuzah scroll, you have now passed the first 2 years of rabbinic school. Okay, I won't quiz you. So I just want to add a little bit more about this whole idea of man does not live by bread alone. In our culture, if you think about it, we have a certain hierarchy of who is important, who's on the upper end of the ladder, who's on the lower end of the ladder, right? You know who a person is by the way we speak to that person, the way we address a woman or a man. If it's a senator, we say senator, right? We don't say Gail or Arlene. If it's a doctor, we don't walk into the doctor's office and say, hi, Josh, how are you? We say doctor. On the other hand, if you're a secretary in the office, we don't say, shalom, Madam Secretary. We usually address that person by his or her first name, and so forth. There are all these nonverbal cues, and if you're the low person in the office, you probably have to water the plants, make the coffee, bring the ice water to whomever is coming into the building, etc. So we have this whole pecking order in society. And it starts really at a very young age. I mean, think about teenagers. Think about your teenagers. If you had a daughter who was an intelligent and sharp person, you'd want her perhaps to maybe get some kind of work as a teenager, right? She could be a babysitter, and then she could graduate to being a tutor, right? And then maybe, if she's energetic, she wants to get a job at a restaurant as a waitress or some other, as a concierge. And you admire that discipline and energy from your 16-year-old. But you don't want her doing that when she's 23 or 4, right? Because by the time she's 23 or 4, hopefully she perhaps went to college and she has some academic standing, and maybe she's already launched herself into the real world of business or whatever it may be. Maybe she's a volunteer or an intern in an office for the local assemblyman or politician. And she's licking envelopes and she's making phone calls and she's checking up on all the constituents in that person's bailiwick. But if she's still doing that at 25 or 6, you're thinking, oh my gosh, when is my daughter or son ever gonna make a living, right? So either they're gonna go to law school or you're gonna kick them out and say, get a job, right? Because status has to increase. We can't be doing the same thing at age 27 that we did at 22. Although nowadays, because our world is so upside down, I know lots of 26 and 7-year-olds are back at home in their room that they once cherished when they were 15, unfortunately not doing the great things that they did 6 months ago. Hopefully that will change in the year ahead. So you and I understand that labor and service tends to encourage certain behaviors. If you want prestige, you want to climb up the ladder. So we live with this subtle message that we have to keep climbing, we have to keep pushing, we have to go up the ladder. It's exactly the opposite of what Kabbalistic teaching teaches. Because if you want to go up the ladder, in a sense, you have to forget about the people below you. And that creates sometimes a great tension or dissension within an office, within a company. In today's Torah portion, God compares the land of Israel, which the tribes are about to enter, as the great and prosperous land. And God says to the people, there in Egypt, the grain you sowed had to be watered by your own labors. But now the land that you're going into, the land of Israel that you shall go into and possess, it soaks up the waters from the rain of heaven, from the dew of heaven. It is a land which the Lord, the good Lord, looks after. And the rabbis are giving us a real message there about who is really doing for whom and who is really the source of greatness and climbing up the ladder, as I put it. The rabbis compiled a famous midrash on the commenting on this chapter in Deuteronomy, and they say, there was a great banquet once held for the Nasi. The Nasi was the president of the Sanhedrin, who happened to be Rabbi Gamliel. And that banquet was given in honor of his son. So Rabbi Gamliel, who was the head of the whole Sanhedrin, made a point of preparing and serving the wine, which one of the subordinate rabbis had refused to do. He thought it was beneath him. Why should he be pouring wine for 70 other rabbis when there was some other worker, some lowly Ovid, who would do that kind of work? And Rabbi Joshua, one of the members of the Sanhedrin, commented and said, why didn't you serve? What's the matter with you? After all, Abraham, our patriarch, one of the greatest persons in the world, served the 3 angels who came to visit him after his circumcision. Remember in chapter 18 of Genesis, Abraham standing in the mouth of the tent, and it's 112 degrees out there in Beersheba, and he didn't know what to do, and then all of a sudden come 3 divine messengers from the Lord, and he says, okay, let's make a meal. I'll do this, I'll do that. And of course, he yells at his wife, Sarai, and says, you'll do this and that. And he yells at his 2 Avadim, his 2 male servants and says, you go get the calf and get ready to slaughter, and so we'll have a nice brisket. But the point is, Abraham wasn't afraid to serve other human beings. It didn't matter whatever their status was. His heart was concerned with doing the right thing. So Rabbi Tzadok says about this story, don't imagine that because you're higher than another person on the pecking order in the business or in the academia world or wherever you may be, that means you can't bend your knee a little bit and serve others. What does it mean to serve? It means to be like God. It means to show compassion, mercy, and kindness to others. And whatever your title may be, it really doesn't matter. What matters is the avodah, the service. And that's why the rabbi who was with Rabbi Gamliel was, in a sense, praising his master, because he was the president of the Sanhedrin, and pointing to the others in the room and saying, you're not strong enough, you're not great enough to actually serve. You expect our master to serve? That's why we read this sentence from Deuteronomy, that man does not live by bread alone. We don't really make it because we're so great. If we believe that, then we're in the midst of an illusion or a sense of self-aggrandizing personality disorder, I would argue. The point is that we can do great things. Yes, we can climb up the ladder. We can become the president of our own company. But the real service is not that we've made it up the top of the ladder. The real service is that we helped others along the way. We could serve others even when we thought we were so big. Because in comparison to the Almighty, we're still rather small. Shabbat Shalom. So we're going to sing the Misha Berach, because we have many in our congregation in need of a blessing for healing. And we're thinking of Flo Vinnick, Doreen Hertig, Lynn Kelly, and we want to think of the mother of Carol Karps, her dear mom, who is about to become 103 years old and is still busy and active and dynamic, and we wish her the very best. Are there others you want to think of for Misha Berach?
People of Beirut.
All the people in Beirut, yes. And did I mention Flo Vinnick, who's recovering from surgery? Okay, let's sing together. We're in the middle, 371. Also, a special blessing for Sheila Bickel, our president, who celebrates her birthday this week, and Melanie and Barry Hornstein, who celebrated their 63rd wedding anniversary. Also, Julie Horowitz and Ron Kite, who had a wonderful anniversary this week as well. So our closing prayers begin on 586. Please turn to page 586 as we sing together the words of the Aleinu on the bottom, towards the bottom of the page. Turn to those who have departed this earth, our own loved ones, and those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to us. As we remember them this Sabbath, we meditate on the meaning of love and life, of death and loss. So during this period of Shloshim, we recall James Thomas, partner of Barbara Doloff, and we also remember Uncle Richard Griswold, was the uncle of Casey. And on this, their yahrzeit memorial with love and devotion, we now remember Lillian Mandel, mother of Eileen Mandel, Herman S. Rosenberg, father of Stuart Rosenberg, and Eleanor Webster, godmother of Kim Sturzer. Let's read the Kaddish together. Let's recite the Kaddish together. The words you'll find on page 598. Please rise if you're able. We're on 598. We'll read together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, v'yamad yibrach chirutei, v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, v'agala v'zman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mavorach le'olam omei amaya. V'yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei rekucha b'richu. Lela min kol v'chata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechamata, ramiran v'alma v'imru Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom v'imramav, v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Oseh shalom v'imramav, v'yaseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael, v'imru Amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu. sanctification for this Sabbath day is on page 123. 123. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei b'riat haven. Baruch Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu mitzvotav v'ratza banu v'shabbat kadsho v'yahava ratzon inchilanu zikaron le'maseh bereshit kihu yom ilah le'mikrei kodesh zecher l'tziyat mitzrayim ki anu ha'arza ve'otanu kibashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha ve'ahava u'ratzon inchilanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you very much for being with us on this Sabbath day.